Welcome to Our Scars Speak. My name is Christina Miner. I am the host of this podcast. And before we begin, I'd like to give a disclaimer that we are not claiming to give you any type of medical advice at all. You listen to your own discretion. And we hope you can truly get some support and some education from this today, which I know you will, because the guest today is absolutely spectacular. Gina Poe. Dr. Gina Poe, excuse me. She works at UCLA. She's all over the internet. I'm gonna let her definitely tell about herself, but thank you so much for coming on. I'm so honored.
Thank you so much, Christina, for inviting me. It's such an honor for me to be here. This whole subject is really near and dear to my heart, and I am so glad for the work that you're doing in helping people around the world to deal with it, right? Better and survive and thrive. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. You are so welcome. And it's so interesting how I found you through, I think it was Mel Robbins first, and then
Yeah.
it was some other gentleman that I seen you on his podcast. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is just phenomenal. Sleep, something that I have an issue with. And then when I got to know you, I found out a little bit more about the connection with breast cancer. And I was so honored that you even, answered my email. And
Oh,
then
wow.
just to know that you are an African American woman who's a neurologist, that
Mhm.
is phenomenal.
Neuroscientist,
Neuroscientist,
Yeah,
neuroscientist,
yeah,
not you know why I'm saying neurologist? Because I got to go see one soon. So,
yeah. Oh, darn.
right. So neuroscientist, but that was, I was like, oh yes, I have got to get her up here and share some nuggets. But first and foremost, before we get into any of that, who are you? Who is you?
Mhm.
Just describe
Okay.
yourself for us.
Sure. I was born in Southern California, which is where I live now.
Okay.
Um, I've, let's see, there's so much to say. Who am I? I am a mother. I have four kids,
Oh,
two
wow.
that I bore and two stepkids who I love also and adore. I have a husband, a dog, a cat. I'm a professor at UCLA and I study sleep. I've been studying sleep since 1987, which is surprising to me because I did not think I would be a scientist at all. And I'd never really even thought about sleep before, except, that it was nice.
Right,
And I wished I could get less of it, and still thrive.
right.
But yeah, my father always thought it was a waste of time.
Oh, wow.
But my mother thankfully had a healthy attitude towards sleep, and so I got enough of it as growing up. But yeah, I didn't think I would be a scientist. I thought science was for genius
Mm,
Einstein types, and
mhm.
not me. I didn't see anybody like me in
Right.
science. So, I didn't even think about it as my own for myself. Even all the way through college, I didn't think I would be a scientist. But once I graduated, I needed a job. I
Hmm.
got my bachelor's degree in human biology, and I thought I would be maybe going to medical school, maybe
Right.
become a physician. But I needed a job while I finished the last of my prerequisites. And
Okay.
so I took calculus and physics at UCLA Extension because my roommate moved to UCLA for law school, and
Hmm.
so I was just like, okay, I may as well go back to LA. And but I needed a job to pay the rent, so
Right.
I started as a waitress. Made horrible tips. I was not very good. I kept forgetting people's orders. And I worked in a restaurant that just, it was lunch. It was not good. Um, so I just put out the word to everybody, my stepdad, all my cousins, everybody said,
Hmm.
"Hey, I need a job. Can you help me get a job?" And my stepdad had a cousin who knew someone at the
Hmm.
VA medical center in Sepulveda who needed a research assistant. I thought,
Oh,
okay, yeah, sure, I could do that. It wasn't paying a lot, but it was enough to cover the rent. So I was
right.
super grateful. Plus, it was related to my major, human biology,
Hmm.
And I thought, okay, well, let's just do it because I needed a job desperately. There was no
Mm.
other options. And so I did that, and I just could not believe how much fun it was to do research.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing. I thought it would be isolated,
Hmm.
me with a white lab coat and a pipette, all alone at a bench all day long, but it wasn't that at all. It's teamwork, it's figuring out problems, it's researching into the literature, what else has other people found, what's left,
Right.
what's critically unanswered, and then trying to figure out an answer yourself, coming up with hypotheses. It's like solving puzzles, and I always love to do puzzles, and it's really like doing a
Wow.
puzzle with a group of people who are like-minded, smart and fun, and it's just I couldn't believe how fun it was.
Wow.
So
I should have called you last semester when I had I had a class with research and I was about to lose my absolute mind. I'm going for my master's in counseling. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not trying to be a researcher or a scientist. Like, why am
yeah,
I in this? But
right.
when I settled down, I agree.
Mhm.
It is a lot of it's very it starts your critical thinking and
Yeah.
just working together with your professor or whomever. It can be a beautiful thing in the end. In the
Yeah, in the end, it's kind of amazing how little we know about
right.
critical things like sleep.
Yes, now that was very intriguing. And something that you even shared, which I alluded to as well in the beginning, is the fact of representation. Like you didn't see anyone like you. And
Yeah.
that was the first thing, honestly, that sparked me when I was like, oh my God. And then I did the research on you and I was like, wow, she is brilliant. And I was like,
Mm.
I've got to get her up here.
Oh,
Her up.
thank you so much. That makes
So
me feel good.
yeah, and I love hearing the story of what happened to get you here, because I
Yeah.
usually have to ask people like, "What? How did you even become a doctor?" What? But
Mhm.
just hearing that was sort of like you were just living life and
Yeah.
just went from from one thing to another and fell in love.
Yeah. Just going through the open doors.
So, was the research that you all were conducting at that point was it about sleep, or did that come later?
No, it wasn't really about sleep. It was a guy, well, there were sleep researchers in the building, but
Okay.
and the guy that I worked with used to do sleep research, but was sort of toward the end of his career and just wanted to have fun. So he
Mm.
got a grant through the Air Force to research for Air Force test pilots how if you could tell whether they were losing consciousness with high G
Oh,
maneuvers, so the Air Force could switch to autopilot. So that's what the Air Force wanted to do.
wow.
So it was about consciousness more than
Hmm.
sleep itself. And so that was my first experiences going up to Edwards Air Force Base and working with the F-16 test pilots and um,
Wow.
outfitting them with the first portable EEG system and seeing whether it was kind of a bust because they're never going to go unconscious, thankfully, because that would be
That's
really
good.
dangerous, especially with a researcher in the back seat going,
Right.
wake up, because we can't do anything. We can't help.
No, you can't maneuver the plane. So,
No, cannot maneuver that plane. But that
wow.
was my first experience. And so it wasn't sleep research, but it was consciousness research. And then with that researcher, he was invited to a conference on sleep and
Mhm.
he could bring a trainee. And I was the closest thing he had to a trainee, even though I wasn't in grad school.
Right.
But so he brought me along and it was this conference that was completely for trainees, and it was about sleep, critical unanswered questions in the field. It was all the best sleep researchers in the world gathered and their trainees. And I
Wow.
couldn't believe what I was hearing, which was, we have no idea why we sleep. There are all kinds of
Hmm.
hypotheses, but there was no good evidence for any of them. There was little bits of evidence, and they were doing their best with lesions of the different parts of the brain to see, can they sleep? Can they not sleep? What happens? We knew some things at that point, which was
Right.
1987. We knew that you had to sleep, and if you didn't get any sleep, you died. There's something called fatal familial insomnia, which is a
Wow.
genetically inherited thing. When you become an adult, there's a time when you stop being able to sleep, and all of those people unfortunately died. And yeah, anyway, so we know we had to sleep. We knew there
Mhm.
was temperature changes in our brains and our bodies when we slept. We knew there was metabolism changes if we didn't sleep. And so there's a lot of things that we knew. We knew it was critical, but we didn't really know all the things that it could do or what was the essential kernel function of sleep. And I have to say, today, 30 years later,
Mhm.
we still don't know the essential kernel function of sleep, but I think we're getting close to
Oh,
finding it.
good.
And I have a feeling of what it is because
Okay.
every animal sleeps, so it has to be true for every animal. But um, but there's some good research going on right now
Wow.
on critical functions.
That's interesting. And when you were talking about the pilots, I have watched that study where they tested them. So I do
Yeah.
know a little bit about that and
Yeah.
then reading about sleep because I do have issues with sleep myself.
Mhm.
So since we're there,
Yeah.
there are some other things, like I said before, I really want to touch on far as breast cancer.
Yeah.
But give us some tips that you would like to, share with everyone about sleep. I'm just going to let
Yeah.
you have the platform and share what you think that we all need to know, especially being not just breast cancer survivors and thrivers, but also like people who are caregivers, because they get
Right.
exhausted. And
Yeah.
I have professionals up here all the time and they're working hard. So yeah,
Yeah.
just share some information if you don't mind.
Sure, sure. So sleep is essential, and thankfully it's homeostatically regulated, which anything essential has to be. Which what that means is if you get less of it, your body demands more. If you get too little of it, your body does what it has to get it. And that means, unfortunately, if you're really pushing yourself, it means falling asleep at the wheel. If you're
Oh,
driving, that's not good. So
yeah.
hopefully, if you're feeling too sleepy, you pull over and take a
Right.
nap. But it
Wow.
is homeostatically regulated. So that's the first thing I think to give you and others some peace about sleep. If you feel like you have issues and you're not sleeping well, even though you're trying, stop worrying about it because your body will do what it has to in order to
Wow.
survive.
Okay.
So it could make sleep more efficient.
Mhm.
It could just cause you to do micro sleeps, like parts of your brain are asleep while other
Right.
parts are awake. Um, and and that's not necessarily good either, again, for driving or
Mhm.
anything that requires a lot of high demand attention. But it is something to give you a little bit of peace if you feel like you're not sleeping enough in the night. We also found just recently that you can have whole parts of your brain actually in one sleep state while another part of your brain is another sleep state. That could give
Wow.
rise to some sleep disorders like sleepwalking and sleep talking, but that is an attempt for your brain to the parts of your brain that need it to get what it needs when it needs it. So that's the first thing is if you can listen to your body,
Mhm.
listen to it and do what it says. If it says, I'm sleepy, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, take a nap. Don't try
Wow.
and medicate it, pound the coffee and get through it. Just say, hey, I'm out, 20 minutes, I'm gone, I'm gonna go take a nap. And that thing, which is called a power nap, really actually does restore power to all the
Wow.
cells in your body, which is what you need. Caffeine makes you think that you've restored power because it blocks the signal that says,
Mhm.
"Hey, my batteries are low." It blocks that signal, and so you think, "Oh, I'm fine now," but in fact, it doesn't restore that power that your body actually
Wow.
needs. So,
So caffeine is a no.
well, I mean, it's not the worst, but I'd say caffeine is a no anytime that it's going to disturb your sleep and you're able to sleep. So, for example, I take a cup of tea in the morning just because I enjoy the heat and the milk and the honey,
Right.
and the warmth of it. But but I don't do it to wake up. And if I don't have caffeine in the morning, if I don't have tea, and I feel sleepy in the afternoon, I know that that means that I have not gotten enough sleep lately, and I should just take a nap if I can. If not, get to bed earlier that night and get more sleep. 'Cause that's my body telling me, hey, you're not doing what you need.
So it's good. So you can have caffeine, but just make for sure that if you do need to take a nap, take that nap.
Take that nap. And I don't take any caffeine after afternoon because for me, I metabolize caffeine really slowly. And if I do take any caffeine afternoon, I will go to bed much, much too late that night. I
Yeah.
actually, if I'm lie in bed, I try to go to bed at my usual time. I'll just, lie there thinking and twiddling my thumbs and thinking, oh, maybe I'll go watch a movie, and that
Yeah.
means the next day I'm going to be impaired. So that's not good.
Yeah, that's me. Like I'll sit up at night and then I'll so first of all, I have racing thoughts, so that doesn't help. And I'm sure there's a lot of
Mhm.
people out there
Yeah.
who have racing thoughts, or
Yeah.
they work long hours, like you stated, and then they have that coffee in the middle of the day. Because
Yeah.
anytime I have caffeine after 3 o'clock, I'm usually
Yeah.
wide awake, like
That's
till
right.
whatever.
That's
Um,
right.
so what do you have any like suggestions? Like I know you said the body will just shut itself off, like
Mm. Yeah.
for myself a lot of times I'll get into bed, be like, don't look at my phone. And then here I am scrolling on everything. So I know it's a big thing about the lighting, I've heard.
Mhm.
Is it like the blue light or
Yeah, there
something?
are a lot of things that affect our sleep. First of all, stress,
Oh,
will do it.
yeah.
Yeah, that will definitely do it because the stress system and the sleep system, are at odds with each other.
Hmm.
Um, so the best thing to do if it's beyond your bedtime and you want to go to sleep is to de-stress. Do whatever it takes to de-stress. Um, so that's different for different people. For me, if it's something I'm actually stressed about, I give it to God. I just
Right.
say, God, you're in charge of the universe. You can handle this little thing for me, right? And so if
Mhm.
I can actually remember to do so, I can give it to God and then have the faith that God will take it. And so that's one thing.
Right.
Second is to do what it takes to take steps. So, right, God helps those who help themselves. Well, I don't agree with that, but but anyway, it helps me to actually do something to help. For example, if I'm stressed about a deadline at
Right.
the end of the week, um, my body is telling me, my brain is telling me, you really aren't prepared for that deadline. Get
Mm.
get up and do something and get prepared. And so, if I make a list or sit there envisioning what I will do about that the next day and come to a conclusion, okay, tomorrow, this is what I'm going to do to
Mhm.
make steps toward that deadline, that can help. Sometimes I actually have to get up and do something toward that stressor. So get up and start writing that list, get up and start writing on the grant that it's just due at the
Mhm.
end, whatever it is. And to a point where I feel like, okay, I'm better, and then I can go to sleep. Um,
Right.
but if that curtails your sleep and the next day
Mhm.
you're really sleepy because you're trying to meet that deadline, I would suggest, the next day planning in time, saying, hey, I stayed up till 1 in the morning doing this.
Mhm.
I can give myself a half hour in the middle of the day tomorrow to take a nap if I need it,
Okay.
and then do it. And
Yeah.
tell people, hey, listen, I'm going to my car. I'm gonna
Yeah.
lean back the seat. I'm gonna be gone for half an hour. I'm gonna take some time to restore my power. Yeah.
Yeah, because my mom's 86, 88. Ooh, I'll take it back. She's
Amen.
88. And
Amen.
so blessed to still have her here. But
Yeah.
I would laugh at her because she's like sleeping through the day. And she used to be like a little road runner, like
Yeah.
just always. And I'm like, Mom, like, why you fall? Like, wake up. She's like,
Yeah.
I'm tired. I'm gonna sleep when I feel like it. And I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I've started doing that. Like I haven't been working for the last 2 years.
Hmm.
And so I do some contract work, but it's like in the middle of the day, especially here lately, because I've had a lot of medical stuff going on. I've just
Hmm.
been like, sleep, just feel
Yeah.
sleep. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna let myself sleep. 'Cause
Absolutely. You should
and
listen
I
to
guess,
your body.
yeah, and some people, they can't because of their work schedules,
Yeah.
especially night shifts and stuff like that. But like you
Yeah.
stated, get that break, that 30-minute break. So
Hmm.
that could be beneficial then, correct? Like
Yes,
at least that 30
absolutely.
minutes of, okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's why it's called a power nap. It actually, literally, your body is restoring power. That mitochondria is making ATP, which is the adenosine triphosphate, which is what your cells need to function. And so, um, and it happens so much faster when you're asleep, especially in the first half an hour asleep. That's when ATP is really made again. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Wow. So, because I do want you to break down those levels of sleep.
yeah,
So
yeah,
the light, what does the light do? Because everybody talks about, I think it's
yeah,
the blue light or the light from our phones and the TV.
right.
What does that do? I've heard that
Yeah,
it can make your body think that it's time to wake up or
yeah.
something to that effect.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, we're attuned to the light in the morning, which
Mhm.
has a lot of blue in it, and that resets our rhythm to say, okay, it's morning time, time to wake up. And so that's why the blue light in your screens at night is not good, because even 5 minutes of bright blue light in the middle of the night is enough to say, tell your circadian rhythm, your clock in your brain, hey, oh, this must be morning time. Okay. And it'll shift everything, forward. Say, okay, it's morning time.
Wow. And I never associated the color blue. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe because I've seen sunrises and they don't really look blue to me.
Yeah, they don't really
I
look
never
blue.
never
But
associated.
sunsets are very yellow, right? Yellow and
Yeah.
and sunrises have more blue in them than
Yeah.
sunsets do. And of course, in the middle of the day, it's blue sky,
Yeah.
there's a lot of blue.
I get the
So
middle of the day, but
yeah,
the
yeah,
sunrise is like, it's kind of dark. Then it starts out kind of like changing
yeah,
colors a
yeah.
little bit, but that makes sense. Okay. So with that, okay, so you have the coat. So I guess that is why everybody's like turn everything off before you go to
Mhm,
sleep. How much
mhm,
time before you go to sleep or get ready to go to sleep should you
mhm.
turn everything off?
Well, okay, so that's a good question, and I don't know the exact answer, but I can tell you the mechanism. One of the things that gets released is something called the hormone of the night, and it's released with darkness. It's called melatonin,
Mhm.
and that is, I think it goes up around, let's see, it's around normally like 10 o'clock, and if
Oh,
yeah, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and so it really helps you get to sleep. With different people, the exact timing of that melatonin release is different depending on light exposure, morning light exposure. But you
mm,
can say on average, it's around 10 o'clock for most human beings. So, and that helps coordinate so much of what needs to happen during sleep. That
mhm.
melatonin is a signal for other hormones to all work together to do that thing, which is building back energy and et cetera, et cetera. A
Wow.
lot of things happen. So,
Wow.
you know,
So the melatonin,
repairing your
now
genes
that,
is one of them, actually.
yeah,
Repairing.
which we're
Yeah.
definitely gonna get into that.
Yeah.
So now that I didn't know. I didn't know it starts like probably about 10 or 11 on average, I guess.
Mhm.
So I guess to turn everything off, maybe about 8:39, like to kind
Yeah.
of get a little bit of dimness
Yeah. At
in your
least
life.
get the blue light out, at least.
Yeah.
And then make it dimmer. Dimmer would be great. Yeah.
That's what I was about to ask you, because
Hmm.
on our handy dandy phones, it has
Hmm.
like where you can dim the lighting.
Hmm.
So that would be the same. That is the blue light that
Yeah,
everyone's
well,
talking
first
about.
of all, there's blue light and night mode in some of our
Night
phones,
mode.
you know, p takes out the blue and or a
Gotcha.
lot of the blue. And then if you can make it dimmer too, that's great. That's great.
Okay. So I don't know if you can answer this question, but I'm gonna ask it before I get into the different rhythms of sleep.
Mm.
Melatonin.
Yeah.
Now, I know a lot of people take melatonin. I have
Hmm.
taken it before. I know I cannot take over 5 grams of
Hmm.
melatonin because it will knock me out the next day.
Hmm. Hmm.
So for
Hmm.
some reason, but I can't sleep at night. Isn't that something? But is it, first of all, I'm sure we need to go to our doctors before we take anything, but
Hmm.
is that, how effective is, like, how careful, I guess, we need to be with the over counter
Yeah.
toning, because we don't really know.
Yeah,
I
that's
always
the
get leery
problem.
of stuff like that, but
Actually, Christina,
I
that
have
is
to.
perfectly right. We don't really know because it's not regulated by the Food and Drug Administration,
Okay.
what melatonin supplements are and how much is in there and whether it's effective at all, active or not. That's just absolutely big question mark. So,
Okay.
um, if and most young people,
Mhm.
um, before age 40 or 50 don't need melatonin because your own body is producing it at the right time. The only time I would take it is if you're, flying across several time zones.
Mhm.
Say, for example, if you're flying east and in East Coast time, you're supposed to be going to bed 3 hours earlier than you normally do.
Right.
Your own body's melatonin is, waiting for those 3 hours. So
Right.
you could take exogenous, melatonin, just take it, and that would help you sleep better. It doesn't it if it's effective, or get a doctor to prescribe something that is FDA regulated, which is
Right.
a melatonin receptor agonist. So it's something that 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 actually acts like melatonin.
Okay.
So and that would be something you prescribe or you get prescribed for you. And that would be for sure effective, and it would probably be the right dose because your doctor is giving it to you. So
Right. Right. Because we really don't know how much our body produces, do we? Or
oh,
is
we do, but what we don't know is how much is in each supplement and if that's the
right.
right amount and how
Right.
much crosses our in from our intestines into our blood and crosses the blood-brain
Mm,
barrier. All of that is, what's questionable versus these drugs from, designed dried drug companies. We have those answers.
right. That makes sense because I, I took one, it was lower than 5. And I was like, okay, this isn't really And
Yeah.
then I said, oh, you know how they have like the 5 mil. I was like, I'll try that. And then I was like, oh my God, like I can't get up. I was like, I'm not taking that ever again.
Yeah,
It just
yeah.
scared me
And
because
that's
I
the
was like,
thing.
ooh.
Yeah, your own melatonin doesn't act that long.
Mm.
It's on for a couple of hours, and that's it. There's a surge, and then it goes away. So that
Oh.
would also be something that if you have take a supplement that just lasts and lasts, yeah, that's not
I don't know what
good.
was going on with me and my body and the melatonin, but I left it alone after that. It scared me.
Yeah.
So if you could share a little bit about the different realms of sleep
Yeah.
and what, how, like, I guess the certain amount that we're supposed to get in each stage of sleep,
Yeah.
from
Yeah,
what I
absolutely.
gathered from your podcast that
Hmm.
you were on.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the first stage we go into from wakefulness is, well, they call it stage one, but that's really kind of drowsiness, just pre-sleep. We don't really remember the last 2 minutes of wakefulness in that state. If you wake up from that state, and it's like when you're falling asleep over a book or something. You don't remember the last several sentences you've read
Right.
when you fall asleep. That's stage one. Stage two is actually when your brain is completely in a different well, actually even stage one your brain's in a different state, but in stage two it's really different from wakefulness. In stage two, all the neurotransmitters, the chemicals in your brain that are high and alert and attuned to the outside world, are way down, and we, our thalamus, which is like the gate of consciousness between our bodies and our brain, is closed. So we don't have acetylcholine, norepinephrine, serotonin, all of those neurotransmitters that are active when we're awake are inactive in stage two. And our thalamus, that thalamic gate, is now just talking to our cortex without letting input from the outside world. And when it talks to your cortex, it's called in sleep spindles. They're about 1.5 seconds long, and it's a reverberation of activity between our thalamus and our cortex. And really cool things can be happening during that time, which is our cortical areas can be talking to one another and consolidating our memories that we've formed during the day and forming new schema. It's
Hmm.
really an important time for kind of not only I talked about metabolically, it's also an
Mhm.
important time for us to kind of reset who we are and incorporate the new experiences into who we are. So that's stage two sleep. And then we
Oh.
go into stage three sleep, which is called deep slow wave sleep. And then what's happening is big waves of activity are kind of sweeping through our brain front to back, and there are big waves of silences that follow these big waves, and they come about 1 per second. So
Wow.
and during that time, our brain is actually cleaning itself from the debris that builds up over the daytime. And so that's actually when we're cleaning our brains. So that's a really important stage, and that you get most of it in the first half of the night. So you go through stage one, stage two. By the time you're in stage three, it's about 40 minutes into your sleep. So if you wake up somebody or try to wake
Mhm.
somebody up after they've been asleep for 40 minutes, it's really difficult because that is kind of a deeply unconscious state. And if you wake people up out of stage three and say, "What were you dreaming? What were you thinking?" They'll say, "Nothing, leave me
Mm.
alone," and they'll turn over and go back to sleep. It's really hard to wake up someone they have what's called sleep inertia. They really need that sleep, that stage three sleep, that's cleaning their brain. And so going from that to wakefulness is really hard. But then we go into REM sleep, and that's the last stage. REM sleep is rapid eye movement sleep because we notice that our eyes are moving rapidly. Or not, we don't notice our own eyes moving so
Right.
rapidly because we're asleep. You can see somebody else's eyes or your dog's eyes or your cat's eyes. Their eyes are moving rapidly. Sometimes they twitch their muscles, and that's the active dreaming state. That's when we really can have storyline kind of dreams with all kinds of vivid imagery. And really important things are happening during that state as well. We can reimagine new things. Um, we can make new connections that we didn't have. It's a time to really change our minds
Mhm.
from um, yeah, and also clear. Um, so once we've consolidated those memories from temporary to permanent structures, we can
Mhm.
clear the temporary structures during REM sleep so that we're refreshed the next day and able to meet the day. And all of those sleep cycles altogether take about, on average, 90 minutes. In the first couple of sleep cycles that you have during the night, the first 3 hours, there's more slow wave sleep than REM sleep. That's slow wave sleep stage 3, the REM sleep. And in the last half of the night, the next 2 or 3 cycles,
Mhm.
you have more and more REM sleep. That's really readying your brain, and it's time for creativity. It's time for, it's really readying your brain for the next day. All of
Wow.
it's readying your brain for the next day.
Right.
Actually, all of it's readying your whole body for the next day.
Mhm.
So, because sleep isn't just for the brain, it's your whole body is doing a lot of these things together with your brain.
Well, that was interesting when you said the 90 minutes. I was
Mhm.
like, wow.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I was thinking much longer than that. But so speaking of the whole body,
Mhm.
of course, you know a lot about this platform is about breast cancer.
Right.
And what can you share with people the importance of, I guess, like our cellular makeup with sleep? Because I guess that would be because breast cancer is obviously um an issue with genes. So
Mhm.
just what is your knowledge on that, as far as something that we need to know and be mindful of as we're trying to do, better self-care?
Right. This is the most exciting area, I think, of sleep research right now, is figuring out what sleep does for each individual cell in our body. And this is something that 30 years ago, we had no clue.
Hmm.
Probably 20 years ago, there were a couple of papers that showed that sleep might be really important for mitochondrial repair, cell repair, and there were things that happened with our genes, but we didn't really know exactly
Mhm.
why and what it was for. But in the last, I'd say, 5 to 7 years, we're starting to realize that sleep is a time when we actually repair our genes. So we kind of repack it. We in one stage of sleep, we're sort of reading out and reading out our genetic material and forming proteins. So that's we're making all the proteins that we need at 10 times the rate that we make proteins during wakefulness. So we're repairing our muscles, we're repairing our bodies. And then in another stage of sleep, in REM sleep, that's when we're repairing that DNA. We're repackaging it and sewing, let's see, patching up the breaks. So just
Wow.
being alive, being around,
Mhm.
there's all kinds of DNA damage that happens, and sleep is the time when we repair that damage. So actually, so there are several great papers, epidemiological papers that show that people who sleep poorly,
Mhm.
too short of time or too interrupted a time, are more likely to get cancer, kind of all kinds of cancer
Really?
later, years later. So that DNA repair is an important function of sleep. And
Wow.
yeah.
Oh, wow. So with cancer and this
Mhm.
particular research, how much sleep should a person
Get.
acquire every night? Like every
Yeah.
night, how much, what's the average, I guess you could say, because I guess everybody's
Yeah.
different.
It seems like the healthiest in terms of the amount of sleep that's associated with the best health
Mhm.
outcomes is between 6 and 9 hours. So it's a pretty wide range and it varies for different people. And I think it varies between based on what's going on in your life, how much stress you're going through, whether you have small children, et
Right.
cetera, et cetera. But somewhere between 6 and 9 hours. If you're getting over 9 hours of sleep per 24 hours of the daytime, then you might consider that there might be something wrong. And kind of the first culprit, the most common culprit, is something called sleep apnea,
Mhm.
which is when you fall asleep and your muscles, all of your muscles relax when you're falling asleep,
Mhm.
but that includes the muscles of your airway. And if your muscles of your airway are already weakened for some reason, or if they're already impacted, for example, by too much fat, or just
Right.
by if your the formation of your mouth and tongue is such that they're already kind of smaller, then it's more likely that they will be collapsed and your airway will be blocked. So you're trying to breathe, but you can't. And then the only way to breathe if you have sleep apnea is to wake up a little bit,
Mhm.
restore the muscles of your airway and breathe again. But if you have sleep apnea, people with sleep apnea, to even be diagnosed with it, you have to stop breathing 5 times in an hour, which is,
Oh,
and wake up 5 times in an hour in order to continue breathing. And that to me is a really disturbed sleep. That's already, even with the mildest sleep apnea, five
right.
times an hour is a lot to wake up. So, and then there are people who wake up 500 times a night, 500 or 600 times a night. And that's very severe. And so
Wow.
your body recognizes that it's not
Mhm.
getting the contiguous sleep that it needs for all of those processes to happen. And so it's saying, I need more sleep. I need more sleep. And you're sleepy, you'll take more naps, you'll try to sleep, longer, you'll get to bed earlier, you'll wake up later, and you'll be generally sleeping more, trying to sleep more than nine
Right.
hours at night. Other things that, if you have an infection or an illness, you have the flu, you'll sleep more than normal and
Mhm.
often more than 9 hours of sleep. And that's because sleep is also serving a function for your immune system.
Mhm.
It actually does help your immune system do what it's supposed to do
Right.
and repair itself. So if you're sleeping over 9 hours a night and you need it to function, you might want to consult with your doctor and
Yeah.
say, what's going on? Why am I sleeping so much?
Right. Maybe get a sleep study because a lot of people do sleep studies to
Yeah,
find that out.
yeah,
So okay, I gotta ask this
uh-huh,
because I'm a female who's had children.
yeah,
So
yeah,
when I drink water and I know I'm supposed to stop at a particular time, but half time I don't. So
yeah.
getting up in the middle of the night, going to the restroom.
Hmm. I do that. It's okay.
How bad is this?
It's okay.
Okay.
But what you should do is stop turning on the light in the bathroom. Have a
Oh, I
little
hurt
night
myself.
light. If it's red, it's even better because it doesn't have
Okay.
that blue light component. And just leave the light off because again, that's light.
Oh
So
yeah.
your body says it's morning. The
Yeah.
same if you have an infant and you need to change their diaper in the middle of the night. Do not turn on the bright overhead light because you're not only resetting your own circadian rhythm, you're setting
Yeah.
resetting your baby's circadian rhythm. So keep the lights dim, red if possible, and let your
Heck,
body know and their bodies know what time it really is.
I should have known you a few years ago with my kids because I would every trying to get to the bathroom and to them. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, that was such good information. So,
yeah.
oh wow.
And I actually drink a lot of water before I go to bed. And the reason
Yeah.
I do that is because that sweeping of your brain to clean it,
Mhm.
you need water to do
Really?
this. Yeah. I mean, most people, if you drink enough water throughout the day, you
Yeah.
don't need to drink within a couple hours of sleep and you're fine until morning and then you can have a big glass of water and you don't have to drink in the middle of the night. But um I often forget to drink enough water during the
I do.
day,
I do too.
and so I'm often quite thirsty at the night, and so I drink a lot, and then I have to get up, and I sometimes get up twice, but it's okay.
Yeah.
If you don't want to turn on the bright light, you go right back to sleep. You'll
Yeah,
be
mine
fine.
is about
Yeah,
twice a night.
yeah,
And it was so funny because we were camping
mhm.
and sort of glamping. My husband said it was glamping because I had to, it was a York.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
nice. That's
So
cool.
but the bathroom was like across the
Oh no.
road down a hill.
Yeah,
And I was like, okay, I'm gonna pee. So I won't wake
yeah,
up because I was
yeah,
already terrified to be out there in the woods. So I was trying
yeah,
to stay asleep so I get my sleep. But
yeah.
I knew I was gonna have to go to the bathroom. But maybe that's why I went to bed so easy when I came back because we had to walk in the dark practically.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that was quite interesting. But yeah, it makes sense though, because it was very, very dark. It was like some lighting, but
Yeah,
I was like, Dag, I usually don't go back to sleep so
yeah,
easy when I come back from the bathroom. So
yeah. Oh,
very
good.
good. I love that. Wow, learn something new every day.
Yeah.
So so speaking of breast cancer,
Mhm.
I know that your mother, I would love for you to share about your mom, or
Yeah,
anything else that you would like to share, but I know that your mother's dear to your heart and you
yeah,
share some things with me. And I just want to give you the platform to be able to share with everyone else in honor of your mom, because
yeah.
she obviously is a spectacular woman, based off everything that you've said about her. I hate speaking of people in past tense or whatever, because I still feel they're a part of us. So
Yeah,
but yeah, so feel free to
yeah.
share.
Yeah, so my mother just was an incredible person. She was raised on a farm and with nine brothers and sisters, and they were very poor, and so she had to be resourceful, and so she was all of her life extremely resourceful, extremely practical, and we were really poor when I was young, and she made our house a home despite the fact that we didn't have a lot. We and my little brother and I were raised by her alone, and she never made us feel poor, even though we were very, very poor. Uh, we would make our own, Christmas tree decorations, and out of egg cartons and beads that she'd get from the thrift store. Um, yeah, she just kept our lives so rich in love and laughter and knowledge. We always reading books. Thankfully, there's a library, for free access to
Yeah.
all of that information. We went to the library all the time. And yeah, so I never, we didn't have a car until I was 11. She finally got a job good enough to save up for a car. Uh, but so we took the bus everywhere or walked, and that's healthy and good too.
Mhm.
Yeah, but once we got a car, we could drive to the beach, which was great. I loved that.
Even better.
Um, so she is hardworking, practical, commonsensical, loving mother, and I just had a great childhood with her and my brother and I. Um, so she struggled with her weight in her adult life. She, was it was 70s and 80s, and she did the yo-yo dieting that so many women did at that time. She tried a new thing and a new thing and a new thing. It really actually wasn't until she was in her 50s that she got finally that bariatric surgery where
Mhm.
they, make your stomach smaller. And she said that was the first time in her life that she ever felt full. So interesting, and she lost a lot of weight and kept it off. So she was probably when she was 58, she was 59 when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she went through the mastectomy, chemotherapy, and she said that saved her life. That she had that bariatric surgery because if you're really overweight, then
Mhm.
chemotherapy doesn't work nearly as well.
Mhm.
And if you can't exercise and take walks and all of that, it doesn't work as well. So she was really grateful that she was able to get that bariatric surgery. And she was diagnosed at 59. She had been feeling tired and some pains in her breast that she'd kind of ignored. She usually did her mammograms every year. That year, she had been kind of stressed and busy
Mhm.
and missed her mammogram. I think she took it late, like she had her mammogram like 6 months late or maybe 8 months late, something like that. And
Mhm.
by the time she did a mammogram, they found that she had already a 4 centimeter large
Mhm.
tumor in her breast, and it was stage 4. It was already pretty advanced. So but she's a fighter. She's a fighter. She did everything that the doctor said: mammogram, I mean, sorry, mastectomy,
Mhm.
chemotherapy. Um, I lost her hair. She had big, long, beautiful hair, and she was sad about that. But she, did all the things. She was she's a home hospice social worker. So she dealt with
Really?
people who were at the end of their life
Yeah.
all the time. She really, she loved her job. She
Mhm.
liked to go in and help, assess what they needed, get the things that they needed to make the end of life, as peaceful and happy as possible. She absolutely loved her job. She's an amazing person. And after she was diagnosed with breast cancer, she said, okay, I really got to get busy living now. So she had been busy living her whole life, but she was like, I've got things I want to do before I
Mhm.
die. And she started writing screenplays and books and short stories. And she had always quilted, but she
Mhm.
started quilting a lot more. She was still working full time, but she was doing all of these other things like you are doing, to make a difference,
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
world. And so she wrote 9 books in the last 9 years of her life. And so she
Really?
lived with the diagnosis and remission and recurrence,
Mhm.
altogether 9 years. She had triple negative breast cancer,
Okay.
and she had a very highly aggressive form of it.
Mhm.
So nobody expected her to live more than 2 years. And so the fact that she was able to, power through for 9 years meant that she was fighting for life the whole
Right.
time. She was living every minute that she could, and she availed herself of all of the new um, therapies, chemotherapies, any kind of therapy. She was
Mhm.
there for it. She was trying it out. She was in lots of trials,
Oh, okay.
clinical trials, and I really thank God for her because she taught me how to live life with kind of a seriousness of
Yes.
purpose.
Yes.
Life is short for all of us. We don't
Mhm.
know when we're going to die. None of us know when we're going to die.
Not at
And so,
all.
leave every day, extract from it the fullest. When she wanted to be there for her grandkids, my kid was already 3 or 4 when she was diagnosed the first time. And then my youngest kid was 4 months when she was diagnosed the second time. And she said, you know, I want to be there for my grandkids. So, we flew out to see her when the first
Mhm.
time, and then she's like, okay, forget it. I'm retiring. When she was diagnosed the second time, I'm retiring and I'm moving to where you are. So she moved across the country and really helped me so much raise my kids. I have a husband, but it was just such a nice thing to have a parent nearby,
Yeah.
when a grandparent nearby when you're trying to raise young kids. And she was just such a gem for them, and yeah, it
Wow.
was really wonderful. And I'm glad she was able to live her life openly. She had cancer. She shared with me her experiences,
Mhm.
and also, just how she confronted it. She did not want to give death a single moment that it, she that it so she didn't spend a lot of time um fretting over her cancer. She definitely dealt with it. She spent
Right.
a lot of time dealing with it. And then she was on a support group online that was really wonderful. She had hundreds of people that she, conversed with over the internet.
Mhm.
Um, and gosh, I can't remember the name of that. Do you know? I
I
don't know if
think
you,
you put it in the email.
yeah, yeah,
And because I was trying to find it, but I couldn't find it. So
yeah,
I'll have to do a little bit
yeah.
more research.
Okay, maybe you
I'll
can
look-
insert that.
but
Yeah,
I did see it in the email you sent me.
yeah,
And I was like,
yeah,
oh, that's such a neat name because it was
yeah.
kind of
Yeah,
like uh
yeah, she
expialidocious, sort of
yeah,
like, but it was something Cali.
fragilistic is what her
Right.
online name was, fragilistic, yeah.
Yep.
Um, yeah,
So I
like
have to go back and try to
supercalifragilistic.
find it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, she seemed like a ball of fun.
Yeah, and she just she shared her knowledge with others like you are doing. She, helped them, encouraged them, all of other people while she was going through it, of course, herself.
Right.
And it wasn't like she put on a false happy face. She also shared with them the struggles that she was going through. And it really is amazing, Christine. I know you know this is true, and all of your followers know this is true, that we can share one another's burdens,
Oh,
it
yes.
is amazing
Yes.
how our load is lightened when we can share
Yeah.
it with other people who understand and listen. And you don't even have to say anything or
Nope.
do anything, just being there for each other,
Yep.
empathizing.
It is
It,
such a difference. I work in mental health, but I was never one to go to groups myself, but
yeah,
I've always
yeah,
encouraged other people to go. But
yeah,
when I finally said, you know what, I need to go to a group, and the group leader that night, I was like, I have a bad attitude. I don't need to come. Like, I'm gonna mess your group up. She was like, you come in your attitude. And when I tell you just the love that I felt of all of us had different diagnoses and all of
yeah,
us had different treatment plans, but all
yeah,
of us heard we had cancer, breast
yeah,
cancer.
yeah,
And that one commonality linked us together. And I always say it's like the club that I'm thankful to be a part of, but I wish I wouldn't been a part of
yeah,
it. But it's sort of like now that I am, it's
yeah,
such a bond. And some
yeah.
people say, it's like trauma bonds and stuff. And yeah.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's still healthy though. It's not
Absolutely.
toxic. It's one
No.
where you can go and you can receive. That's the whole reason for this podcast, because we all
Yeah,
have a story to share, and our story, no matter where we are in it, can
yeah,
help the lives of another person. But I never force anyone to share their story.
yeah,
But
yeah,
like you stated, it's just such a place where you can come and just support one another.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's such a bond. I
Yeah.
can't,
Now, speaking of sharing stories,
yeah.
so the other reason why I'm super grateful for my mother for being so open about her journey is that, she was 59 when she was diagnosed and she was 68 when she passed. By the way, she passed exactly the way she wanted to, which was, with all her marbles intact,
Oh,
and working all the way up to the end. And, so she was she's a Christian woman like I
uh-huh.
am. And one of the things she told me, I'm going to go back to my story in a moment,
No,
but one
you're
of the things
fine.
that
You're
she
fine.
told me as a hospice worker is that, she saw people dying all the time, right? She's a
Mhm.
hospice worker. She said the people who had faith in God or faith in life beyond death always had a rock that they were on. They would never sink all the way to the bottom of despair because they had this hope and this faith in in what came beyond, and not that fear that can
Right.
grip us. I'm going to die. What's going to happen? Am I, you know, I think there are so many toxic beliefs about the afterlife, or
Mhm.
what happens after we die. Uh, the people that she said had the most peace in the end were those that didn't have those toxic beliefs and could meet death with peace in their hearts.
Wow.
So she had that. Thankfully, she had that,
That's
and
beautiful. And you were with her, right? The whole,
I was with her.
yeah,
I
because
was
she
with
moved
her.
with you, right?
What's that? Yeah,
She
she
moved
didn't live
with
with me. She just lived just down the block. So
Okay, but you were still with her. That's good.
yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah. She called me and I came right over, and within an hour or two she had passed. So
wow.
I'm really glad I was able to be there with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
The other thing as a neuroscientist, again, I'm just gonna, boy, we could fill this hour really
no,
quickly, can't
you're
we?
fine. You're fine. Take your time. You're fine.
Well, the other thing that gives me a lot of peace about death is that if you've seen any shows with people who have had near-death experiences and come
Mhm.
back, always, 100% of the time, it is joy that they
Yeah.
experienced. And even people who said, I lived a terrible life, I was selfish, I was awful to people,
Right.
they even have really positive, loving, just overjoyous kind of near-death experiences. And um, so that gives me hope that people don't need to fear death,
Right.
because what's coming is something so indescribably beautiful that
Mhm.
people feel like they can't describe it. And
Right.
so, yeah. So anyway,
Yeah, but no, I'm
um,
glad you said that, because a lot of people are fearful. Um,
yeah.
and there's so many studies about faith, or if they're
Mhm.
not Christian, just believing in something higher than
Yeah.
themselves, and
Yeah.
they have such a better transition into
Mhm.
death. So
Yeah.
no, God, thank you for sharing that one.
Yeah.
Oh, Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so so when I was 57, I said, okay, I'm getting to the age that my mother was when she, missed her mammogram and then got it late and then it was already 4 centimeters. I don't want to do that. I
Mhm.
always had my annual mammogram, but I started saying, listen, I'm done with these breasts. I don't need them anymore. I have raised my kids. I just don't need them. Let me get a double mastectomy just so I don't have
Right.
to worry about this premature ending of my life.
Mhm.
So I started petitioning my primary care physician. They're like humming and hawing, there's no indication, there's no need
Mhm.
to go there. I'm like, no, let's just do it. Let's be like Angelina Jolie. Well, do you have the gene, the BRCA gene? No, I don't. But
Right.
that doesn't mean I'm not going to get breast cancer. Only 5% of women with breast cancer have that BRCA gene, right?
That's true.
Everybody else, it's spontaneous. So, as they're like, well, I don't think health insurance is going to pay for it. It's just voluntary. And I've started thinking about that. I thought, well, how much does it cost? Can I save my pennies to do it myself? And so, I started planning for that. In the
Mhm.
meantime, I'm going to share with you that my health insurance company has to pay for a gender reassignment surgery. So I could have gotten a double mastectomy if I had,
Right.
lied and said, listen, I've always wanted to be a boy,
Right.
So
That's
I was thinking,
interesting though. I don't think a lot of people know that.
yeah, yeah. So I was like, I feel like a man a lot of the time. Let's just, so I
Yeah.
had thought about doing that. But before I got around to that, in 2021, I think it was, I had my annual, exam and they found something on my right breast and did a biopsy and it was benign. But I'm like, okay, here it goes. I went through all the fear. Okay, there's something there. Let's do a biopsy. It was benign. And that's when I started really petitioning my
Right.
doctor and then the next year, 2022, they found something on my left breast and they did a biopsy.
Mhm.
And by the way, biopsies are not fun, but um, let's just say, it's like being skewered, actually.
Yeah.
It's like being skewered on a shish kebab.
Yeah.
Anyway, uh,
That's a good way of putting that. I had never thought about that with that long. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, they say I was gonna pinch a little. Well, anyway,
Pinch a little hard.
not to make anyone be afraid of it, because you need it, you do it.
Right.
It was benign. By then I'm like, this is too much. This is ridiculous. So I really started pressing hard for a double mastectomy. Then I I think I had to miss my regularly scheduled mammogram because I
Mhm.
was teaching on a different coast. And I tried to reschedule it for as soon as after as I could, but because healthcare is so impacted, they were not going
Right.
to be able to schedule it for 9 months later. And I'm like, oh no,
Right.
this is what my mother did. She missed it. She, months later she had it, and I'm like, no, I'm not doing this. And they would just, just sorry, we don't have any availability. This is what we can do. And I started talking to friends and people and finally realized that, in fact, my health insurance would pay for my annual mammogram to be done outside my network, and
Oh.
it wouldn't cost me any more if as long as it was a tier one, I just had to talk to the insurance company and they said, oh
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And nobody had told me that. It wasn't written anywhere.
Not
I
gonna
didn't know
volunteer
that.
that
Yeah,
information.
they didn't volunteer. So I went and I got it scheduled the next week at a
Mhm.
different place. I had to drive a little farther. That's not a big deal. And they found something. So I'm like, oh gosh, and it just took so long because it was out of network for them to transfer those records to my in network
Oh,
so that they could do biopsy and all of that. It took like a month for them to finally schedule the biopsy. Did a
wow.
biopsy. It was not benign, it was precancer. And this was back in my right breast. So I'm like, okay, this is really ridiculous. I said,
Yeah.
I said to my doctor, this is ridiculous. I need something more. And so they referred me to the breast center at UCLA, which is fantastic. Can't say enough about him.
Mhm.
The nurse practitioner said, okay, yeah, this is high risk. You want double mastectomy, I'll have you meet with a surgeon And because it's pre-cancer, it's not cancer, it's pre-cancer. You can meet with a surgeon, and so she scheduled me to meet with a
I'm
surgeon.
sorry. When you say
Yeah, go ahead.
precancer, are they saying hyperplasia or are they saying DCIS?
I don't know.
Because people call it different things. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I don't even know. They just
Okay,
said it's not cancer. That's what I heard.
okay, it may be the
But then I
atypical.
didn't even know it was pre-cancer until months later. But
Gotcha.
anyway, so she said, we'll sign you up for genetic screening. I'm like, I already know I'm BRCA negative, but sure, sign me up for, they did tests of a lot of other genes as
Right.
well. Um, and she said, I'm going to sign you up for every 6 months to have an MRI in addition to your
Hmm,
annual mammogram, an
good.
MRI. I didn't even know one could get an
Oh,
MRI,
yeah.
but I was like, oh yeah, okay, sure, let's do that. Still, I want double mastectomy, so that should make the MRIs, moot point. but,
Right.
um, but let's see when it can get scheduled, and in the meantime, sign me up, sure. Um, so so I did my first MRI just a week before I was due to have my first meeting with this surgeon about whether I could get a double mastectomy,
Mhm.
without a cancer diagnosis. And something lit up like a Christmas tree on my left breast. They were like, whoa, the technician can't say anything. They didn't say
Right.
anything, but it, I got to see the images, and it was, it was bright. So then it was, people went on vacation. So it was kind of a maddening long time before.
Mhm.
Then they wanted to do a diagnostic ultrasound. I couldn't get scheduled for that for a month later, so that was frustrating. Finally, I got my diagnostic ultrasound. It showed nothing. It was perfectly clear. So, but they said, well, let's do an MRI guided biopsy. I'm like, okay, well, if you're going to do that, why didn't you just, why did we even do the
Right.
waste a month's time on the ultrasound? But whatever.
Probably
So
insurance because they have
yeah,
certain.
it probably was insurance. Yeah, because it's cheaper to do
Yep,
that.
they'll try to do that
Um,
first, and then if that
yeah,
comes back positive, then they give you something else. It's just
yeah.
really.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that came back negative, and they still gave me the
Yeah,
something else, thankfully. So the
yeah.
MRI guided biopsy, which this is again my third biopsy, and I have to say, or was it fourth? Whatever. Anyway, I have to say this guy was amazing. So if you biopsies don't have to be awful. This guy
Oh,
put in
terrible.
the lidocaine or whatever it was, anesthesia,
Oh.
waited enough time. You need 2 minutes for it to take effect. He waited 5 or 10 before he put in the
Mhm.
next thing. And it was almost painless. It was just the pinch that they say, oh, you're going to feel a pinch. It felt a pinch, and that was it.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so even though it was a big biopsy, they
Yeah,
took it was hopefully,
it's
I
a lot
also
better.
told them beforehand, I know this is just a biopsy, but can you just take it all? Just take
I know,
everything.
right? Just take
Don't,
everything.
may as well be a lumpectomy since you're in there anyway. He said, well, I'll get a good biopsy sample, but I think he
Yeah.
probably did take it all. And then then later I'd heard that that was triple negative cancer. So I too had triple negative cancer, and but thankfully it was only, I think the MRI showed 7 millimeters by 4 millimeters by 4 millimeters, so
Okay.
small.
Okay.
And then the biopsy, they did all the tests of what it
Mhm.
is. Triple negative, definitely grade 2.
Okay.
So I guess there are 3 grades, and this was the
Yeah.
one. It was a low on the side of grade 2.
Oh.
Um, they didn't know if it was ductal or lobular. It had features of both. But
Hmm.
it was invasive. It had histiocytoid features,
Hmm.
which I don't even know what that is, but it's,
Yeah.
it's
It's all the
something
lovely
weird.
names that they give about shapes
Yeah,
and everything else. Yeah.
histiocyte. I spent an hour talking to an oncologist. He spent a whole hour with me. He was
That was
fantastic
so
to
nice.
try and go through all of these
Yeah.
test results. I'm so thankful for that meeting.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, in the between time between the time I had my MRI and had the biopsy, I talked to a surgeon. She was like, yes, even if this is nothing, I can get you a double mastectomy
Yep.
because you are high risk, and this is something you're doing for your health. Let's do it. So she said, this was October. She said, let's do this right after, or maybe it was November. She said, let's do it after the holidays because there are a lot of stuff that
Right.
happens during holidays. And then when the thing came back as positive for triple negative cancer, I
Mhm.
said, like, can we move it up? And they tried to move it up. They couldn't. But I am scheduled. I'm scheduled now for less than 3 weeks from now to have a double
Yeah.
mastectomy. And
Wow.
I'm just so thankful. It's like 3 months. One thing I'm kind of concerned about, it's a long time since they first MRI showed it light up
Yeah.
like a Christmas tree, but it has supposed to be slow growing mitotic score.
Yeah, it's
So
because a grade 3 is what I had, which is
yeah,
fast growing.
fast growing. Yeah, my
Yeah.
mother too. My mother
They
had
had
fast.
wanted me to wait 6 months to get
What?
yeah. So it was first it was like, oh, we found something. It was like, oh, but we can just watch it because they didn't know if it was cancer because everything kept
Right,
on coming back benign,
right,
including my biopsy. And I was like,
right.
no, I need to
Mm-mm.
come back in 3 months. And then my
Yeah,
surgeon said, come back in 2 months. And when she
yeah.
did that, she's like, it's DCIS. She said, which is in the ducts. She said, but it's a
Uh-huh.
grade 3. So it's growing
Yeah,
fast. So it
yeah,
definitely would have been invasive in 6 months.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. In situ, ductal in situ. Yeah,
Yeah,
ductal
because
carcinoma in
that
situ.
a lot of people don't know, but sometimes with that particular cancer, when
Mhm.
Black women and when it becomes invasive, a lot of
Yeah.
times it's triple negative.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
you are on this, you're now part of this
Journey. Yeah, I'm part of the
journey with
journey.
us.
Part of
I
the
think,
sisterhood and
yeah, part of
brotherhood, I
this.
guess there's some
Yeah,
men.
yeah, men have it too.
Yeah.
But I want you to know you are so
Yeah.
supported. And I
Thank
know
you.
you know that because you
Yeah.
have people at your work and
Mm,
different people around you, but you have my support 100%. And I
thank you for
knew
your support.
something was going on. I was like, okay, look, at this
Mm,
point, because I didn't hear from you. There was a
yeah.
I didn't hear from you. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, okay,
Yeah.
forget the podcast. Like, are you okay?
Yeah, I
I knew you were
appreciate that.
going, I knew you were going through, you had
Yeah,
said that you
something.
were going back and forth to the doctor.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, no, 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 no. We can table the podcast. I just want to make sure you're good. And that's when I sent that message like, okay, you don't have to do the podcast, but how are you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And okay, so another part of the story is, all through this, I'm pushing to get double
Mhm.
mastectomy, even before I knew I had a diagnosis. And so when I had the diagnosis and they were like, yeah, let's do it, I'm like, I was ready. It wasn't like a big, for me, adjustment, like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
get rid of my breasts. I was like, I'm done with these. I'm so glad
Mhm.
to get rid of them. Really super
Yeah.
happy. Um, and whether I go flat or have a,
Doesn't
implant,
matter.
whatever, I don't care, just as long as,
It's
these
gone.
these things. Yeah, I'm calling it it's my rusty old milk factory. It's starting to cause trouble.
That's funny you say that because I asked my breast surgeon, I said, can breastfeeding, like if you have a bad duct or
Yeah, yeah.
infected, can it change in the cancer? She's like, there's nothing out there that states that. I said, well, I swear that breast,
Mhm.
that's where I breastfed that one
Yeah,
side. And
yeah,
it did get enlarged and
yeah,
well, it was enlarged. I don't know if it was infected per se, but
yeah,
that was the area where I had the breast cancer.
yeah,
So it's funny
yeah,
when you said the milk factory. Yeah.
yeah. It's just
It's like demolish it.
out of use and causing problems.
Yes. So,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry. Good.
No, no, I don't know what I was going to say. I can't remember what anymore.
Oh,
So, oh, sleep, sleep. We're
yeah.
going back to sleep. So, I've always been a pretty good sleeper. If it's a stressful time, I will do what I described earlier, which is get up and do some work or make a list or whatever to
Right.
help out. It's short-lived, and then I can go back to sleeping great again. Um, but once I learned that I had cancer, of course, my sleep was disrupted. It was a lot more. I
Yeah.
spent a lot of time thinking about what am I going to do? Don't have a will. I need to write a will.
Mhm.
Does this mean I'm going to die early? How sad, and just a lot of these feelings were coming up, especially at night when it's quiet and
Yeah.
all the other distractions of the world are melt away. So yeah, I had some insomnia, and I think that that is perfectly normal, and people shouldn't beat themselves up or worry about it because that is normal. But if you can do something to calm yourself, like giving it to God or making your list, do deep breathing exercises, try and resolve the anger if you have any anger
Right.
about, all of this and the process and people
Hmm.
working too slowly. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Definitely.
yeah, yeah. So I'm glad you said, oh yeah, I think that cancer, breast cancer or any cancer, should be treated like a heart attack.
Yeah.
Once it's diagnosed, you just do what it takes right away. Boom, 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 boom. There
Yeah.
shouldn't be this month waiting for the scheduler to get you a slot in
Not
here.
considered an emergency at all.
Yeah,
And my
and
breast surgeon, she was like, yeah, it's not considered. I said, well, to me,
yes,
like it is an emergency. She's like, I
absolutely.
understand. She said, but I'm letting you know how it is considered like in the medical field and insurance. And I used to work in a hospital, but I worked with the cardiac unit and
Mhm,
ER.
mhm.
So everything was fast paced.
Yeah,
Even the
yeah,
cardiac unit
exactly.
with ICU, it still is a little bit faster.
That's
So
right.
to go from all of that, and I'm sure you can relate to this.
Mm,
Um, I wasn't a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I do have education. I have my bachelor's, working on my master's and all that. And
Congratulations.
but knowing some information can be sometimes a little bit more scary than not knowing information,
Yeah,
because yes, we have Google, people research it, but when you've actually worked in the field of
yeah,
medicine and you
yeah,
know certain things, it
yeah,
can weigh on or if you have been a caregiver to someone,
yeah,
all of that will start playing with your head. And
yeah.
I'm like, darn it, I wish I didn't know what benign and malignant means. Like, it's
Right.
just like, darn, maybe it would
Yeah,
be better not knowing at the moment, because
right.
you're like, why aren't y'all hurrying up?
Yeah, hurry up. I mean, I guess there are clinics like the Mayo Clinic, which, do, right
Yeah.
through. Um, but, to know there's something malignant in your body sitting there growing as fast as it can
That's
and could break off to other parts of your body and become, metastatic,
metastatic.
right?
Mhm.
Metastatic. It feels like, this is my analogy, it feels like finding a spider egg sac
Oh
above
God.
your above your baby's crib or on your baby's crib and not just swiping it out, right? It's because you don't know when those eggs are going to break
You
open and the spiders
don't?
are going to go all over, right?
Yeah.
I feel like it should be treated like that.
Oh
Like,
my God. You just gave such a good description, because I've stepped on one of those before and the
yeah.
spiders just went everywhere. And so when you
Oh.
said it, I was like, oh,
I feel like I have this spider egg sac, and people are like, well, let's watch and see what happens. No, no, let's not watch and see what happens. Let's get rid of it. Oh, well, let's figure out what kind of spider it is first. No, it doesn't matter. Get
you
rid of
know it's
it.
a spider. You know it
Yeah,
can
it's
bite
a
you.
spider. Get
Just
rid of it.
yes, because that's what I was telling someone. I have a friend, she's very holistic, right? And
Yeah.
she was like, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. And cancer, it spread, I mean, sugar spreads it, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, look, I'm gonna do any and everything they tell me to do because
Yeah.
I'm trying to live. Because when
Yeah.
you have cancer, I described it as someone's breaking into your home and you're going
Hmm.
to take everything, a lamp, whatever you can
Yeah.
find. If you have a weapon, whatever, you're gonna do
Yeah.
everything you can to hurt that person, to get them out
Yeah.
of the house, to keep your
Yes.
family safe and to keep yourself safe.
Yeah.
So I was like, whatever they tell me to throw at this, I'm throwing
Yeah.
at it. And
Yeah.
I
Amen.
had, I don't know, it's because my treatment plan, a lot of people are like, why don't you just get a double, a
Yeah.
lumpectomy? And I was like, I'm hypertensive. So
Yeah.
if I do radiation and
Hmm.
I do, other tamoxifen,
Hmm.
I'm already at risk for strokes and heart attack. Like that
Yeah.
can even triple it or
Yeah.
quadruple it. Um,
Yeah. There's
but
ways. Yeah.
but if I
Uh-huh.
would have had to done it, I would have done
Mhm.
it. You can believe it.
Yeah.
With the double mastectomy was, the best treatment as far as
Yeah.
my cancer.
Yeah.
But if it were to come back, or had it been something different and I couldn't get a double mastectomy, if they said I had to go through chemo or radiation, that's
Right.
just what I would have done for
Yeah.
myself.
Yep.
Um, because
That's
I'm just
right.
like, you just throw whatever you can. I'll never forget a doctor who I thought very highly of back home.
Huh.
They thought I had cervical cancer when I was in my 20s.
Wow.
And the woman was like, my guy was like maybe one cell away from it being, it was terrible.
Wow. Wow.
And he said he wanted me to get a hysterectomy because a friend of mine, the doctor, he said, when you have a precancer or cancer, you are aggressive. Do not wait do
Yeah.
not wait. He's like,
Mm.
I'm not your doctor. He said, but I would have gave you a hysterectomy. He said,
Mm.
because those things have a tendency to come back. And,
Mm.
that was just his philosophy. But
Yeah.
now going through what I went through, I get it. Like, you want to try your hardest to do everything possible.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. To live.
yeah,
To live.
live.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And so I do this thing, I'm starting to do it where people come back and do like IG lives here and there
Mm.
sporadically. So if you get, you want to give us a report on how you're doing, or,
Absolutely.
IG, when you get better and all that
Yeah.
good stuff. Um,
Yeah.
definitely, but I'm gonna be staying in touch with you anyway, because I
Thank you.
definitely yeah, I have to,
I
because
appreciate that.
you're just so sweet. You're just a sweet
Oh,
person. And I just feel like this
mhm.
connection with you just absolutely.
I feel a connection too. Thank you.
So before we wrap up, I always ask people their song that they picked for their reel, the
Mhm.
name and the artist and why they chose that song.
Hmm. Well, I know the song that was in my heart when my mother had triple negative cancer was Mahalia Jackson's um, Soon We'll Be Done with the Trouble of the World, Trouble of the
Mm,
World. And that to me just is such a beautiful song. And it's a song of hope, right? It's acknowledgement that there are troubles in this world,
mhm.
but we have something to look forward to, something, where we can live, see our mother again,
Yes,
see God again, and live without any more trouble. So I think that's
absolutely.
my song.
Okay.
Mm.
And what's one word that you can share with everyone, like if they're going through their own wounds right now, or they
Mhm.
have scars that are very difficult for them to even look at, whether it be
Mm.
mental or physical, what's a word that you can share with them to give them some hope or some inspiration? And why do you share that particular word with everyone?
Yeah, for me, it's gratitude.
Mm,
Gratitude. And when I'm laying awake at night, worrying and angry or whatever, if you just turn your mind back to all the things you're grateful for, you realize you can't come to the end of it. There's no coming to the end of it. I'm grateful for my toes, I mean,
yes,
they help me stand up. I'm just grateful for my body and all the things that do work in it.
right.
There's so many things that do, so many more things that do
Yeah.
work that don't, right? And we are miracles. Every single one of us, we are alive. We are
Yep.
miracles. If you can listen to this podcast that
Mhm.
Christina has made, you are a miracle. The fact that your ears are working, that your eyes are working, whatever it is that's working, your taste buds, your smell, your fact that you can breathe, that's
Yeah,
just amazing. We have so much to be grateful for.
we do.
And you and me, I mean, here living in the, in terms of world's wealth, we're doing pretty well, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
so we have a comfortable bed to sleep in. We
Mhm.
can stay out of the rain. That attitude of gratitude, I think, is the key to happiness and to peace, and thanking God for all of these things. It brings joy. It brings joy, and that helps you sap the marrow out of life and not give death a second longer than you have to.
Absolutely. And where can people find you if they want you to speak, or
Yeah.
do you have an email
Yeah,
or
I
anything?
do. I have an email. You can find it's Gina Poe, all one word, Ginapoe at UCLA.edu. I also have a
Okay.
Gmail, but I don't look at that very often because there's a lot of junk there. There's a lot of junk that comes in there. But anyway, yeah, UCLA at UCLA.edu. Um,
Okay.
yeah, that's one way. If you want to hear talks that I've given before about sleep, you can find me on YouTube or
Mhm.
at other places. And now you can find me here
Yes,
talking to
I
Christina
was
Miner.
going to speak.
Yeah.
Well, before I end, I want to share with you something, and I like
Mhm.
to share with my guests just a little word of encouragement. And for you, a word that I thought of the whole entire time that you were speaking. First of all, you're so generous, because I was like, when I seen your email and you responded back, and it was so lengthy, I was like, wow, she really is a compassionate, loving person. Like, she's really a good
Your
person.
cause is near and dear.
Oh yeah, and then I read it, and
Sometimes
I
my
was like,
replies are one line.
oh okay, because I was like, wow. Um, I just want to say that when I think of you and after having this interview with you, grace.
Mm.
Grace. I see grace all over you.
Oh,
Hopefully I don't start crying because I got to I cry all the time after I had cancer.
oh my goodness,
Um,
that word means so much to me. That really
oh,
does.
and I did not know that.
Oh,
But grace, I see it all over you. I see it in the way you speak, the way,
mm.
just the way you articulate your words. It's just grace. I just see God's grace all
Ah,
over you.
thank you.
And with that, though, I want you to know as you go through this process that you're getting ready to go through this journey, which will lead to a testimony. I
Mm.
want you to know to remind yourself to have grace with yourself.
Oh, amen. Thank you, Christina.
Have grace with yourself. It's okay to put you the head right now. Let people take care of you.
Thank you.
Um, I know you're already gonna be gracious to other people, but sometimes when you're on medicine and stuff, we get a little cranky. I don't know about you,
Oh, I've been crankier. I have been crankier. My husband can attest.
and hearing those, wonderful diagnoses and stuff, it can make us a different person in a way. But at the end of the day, I see grace all over you.
Oh,
And I thank you also for your representation in the medical field. That's so
mm,
vital to our community.
mm.
And just grace. I just see it. And I just want you to extend it to yourself, though. Don't forget to extend it to you.
Thank you, Christina. You
That can
are
be
a
hard
blessing.
to
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
You
That
are.
can be hard to remember when we're
Yeah.
going through so much. And then you have such a close connection to this disease by your mom. Satan
Mhm,
can start trying to play with your head, but just
mhm,
remember that the
mhm.
blood of Jesus Christ is upon you.
Amen. Thank
He
you.
heals all things. And
Yeah.
I can't say that, and I just can't say it enough. Just
Yeah.
just walk underneath his grace.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
That
you.
umbrella.
Well, yep. Before we end, I like to say to everyone who watched, thank you so much for watching this podcast, another episode of Our Scars Speak. And I hope and pray that each of you who are listening, that as your scars are healing, as your wounds are healing, that you will remember that they speak a story. I don't know when you're going to tell your story, but I hope you will one day. And remember that your scars do speak. And until next time, we see you later. We
Mhm.
love you and bye bye.